The Silent Ward. Part 1. The rain had been falling for hours when Clara reached the gates of St. Verena's psychiatric clinic. The iron bars loomed above her like the ribs of a giant skeleton, slick with rain, humming faintly as the wind pressed against them. Beyond the gates, the main building rose out of the fog, tall, gray, and silent. The windows were long and narrow, like watching eyes. Clara hesitated before pressing the bell. She wasn't supposed to be here, not exactly. Her editor had given her the assignment weeks ago. A human interest story about recovery, about hope in modern psychiatry, he'd said.
But the more she researched St. Verena's, the more she found that no one really knew what went on inside.
The clinic was built in the late 1800s as a monastery, then converted after the war into a mental institution. Officially, it was now a rehabilitation center for trauma patients. Unofficially, well, that was what Clara intended to find out. The gate creaked open on its own. For a second, she thought someone had buzzed her in. But when she looked around, there was no one, only the faint echo of her own footsteps and the rhythmic tap of rain against her umbrella. As she walked up the gravel path, the fog seemed to close behind her like a curtain. The clinic swallowed her whole. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant and damp wood. A nurse in a pale blue uniform looked up from behind the reception desk, her expression polite but distant.
"You must be Miss Weiss,"
she said.
"the journalist."
Clara nodded, brushing rain from her coat.
"Yes, I have an appointment with Dr. Reinhardt."
The nurse gave a tight smile.
"Of course. He's expecting you. Please wait here."
Clara set her bag down and glanced around. The room was large, but oddly quiet. No hum of equipment, no voices, not even footsteps echoing down the long corridors. A single clock ticked on the wall. The sound seemed unnaturally loud. A few minutes later, a tall man appeared at the end of the hallway. He moved with deliberate calm, his hands clasped behind his back. His hair was silver, neatly combed, his eyes sharp and unreadable.
Miss Weiss,
He said warmly, extending his hand.
welcome to St. Verena's. I'm Dr. Reinhardt.
"Thank you for receiving me, doctor.
She said.
It's quite a place you have here."
He smiled faintly.
Yes, quite.
They walked down the corridor together, their footsteps echoing softly. The walls were lined with old photographs, black and white portraits of doctors and patients from decades past. Some of the faces had been scratched out. Clara stopped in front of one, a young woman in a hospital gown, eyes wide and glassy. The nameplate beneath it had been removed.
"Who is she?"
Clara asked. Dr. Reinhardt's tone didn't change.
Some of our records are incomplete.
He said.
We prefer to focus on the present.
He gestured toward a heavy door at the end of the hall.
This way, Miss Weiss. I'll show you to the ward where most of our long-term patients stay.
Clara followed. The light grew dimmer as they descended the narrow staircase. The air was colder, denser, and somewhere deep below, faint but unmistakable, she heard a whisper, a voice. It sounded like someone saying her name. The corridor to the lower ward was dimly lit by weak yellow bulbs, their light flickering as if unsure whether to stay alive. Dr. Reinhardt's steps were even, calm, while Clara's shoes clicked nervously against the cold tiles. She tried to shake the strange feeling that someone was watching them, not from behind, but from the walls themselves.
This floor
Dr. Reinhardt said.
is what we call the silent ward. Most of the patients here suffer from trauma-related mutism. They rarely speak. Some haven't uttered a word in years.
Clara hesitated.
So they just stopped talking?
Yes, some after accidents, others after witnessing events the human mind isn't built to process.
He looked at her, his smile too controlled. You'll find silence here quite instructive, Miss Weiss. He opened the heavy metal door, and the sound that escaped wasn't silence. It was deeper, a kind of absence of sound, a vacuum that swallowed even her breath. Rows of narrow beds stretched along the walls. Most of them were occupied. Men and women sat upright, motionless. Their eyes were open, but they stared at nothing, as if they were listening to something beyond the room. A nurse crossed the hallway, glancing at Clara without expression. Her name tag read Elise. In her hands, she carried a tray of medication cups, which she placed one by one on a counter. No one reached for them. Dr. Reinhardt gestured to a chair.
You may speak with any of the patients, but remember, many cannot respond verbally. Observe if you wish.
Clara nodded and approached the nearest bed. The patient was a woman in her 50s, her hair long and silvered. Her hands trembled slightly, as if she were writing invisible letters in the air. Clara crouched beside her.
Hello, my name is Clara. I'm here to learn about your story.
The woman blinked slowly, once, twice, then turned her head just enough to meet Clara's eyes. Her lips didn't move, but her gaze sharpened, and for a split second, Clara could have sworn she heard a whisper. Get out. She jerked upright. The sound had been inside her head. Dr. Reinhardt noticed her reaction, but said nothing. He simply smiled, the corners of his eyes still as glass.
You'll find that trauma can manifest in strange ways here,
he said softly. They moved further down the hall. One door stood slightly ajar. Inside, a man sat at a small wooden table, drawing circles over and over with a piece of chalk. The circles overlapped endlessly until the entire surface was white.
Who's he?
Clara asked.
Patient 27,
Said Reinhardt.
former psychiatrist, lost his ability to distinguish patients from staff. Tragic case.
Clara stepped closer. The man paused his drawing and looked up at her. His eyes were completely clear, intelligent, alert, and in that quiet moment, he mouthed something distinctly. You don't belong here. A chill ran through her spine. She turned to Reinhardt, but he was already moving toward the next corridor, speaking about treatment methods, research, and moral rehabilitation. But Clara barely listened. Every step they took deeper into the silent ward seemed to pull her further away from the world she knew, and closer to something that should have remained hidden. And though she didn't know it yet, someone, or something, had already decided she would not be leaving the clinic the same way she entered. That night, Dr. Reinhardt offered Clara a guest room on the upper floor. The rain outside hadn't stopped, and the roads were said to be dangerous in the dark. He was polite, insistent, and before she realized it, she was holding a brass key engraved with the number 12. The room was small but clean. White walls, a narrow bed, a writing desk. On the nightstand stood a single glass of water and a folded note. Do not leave your room after midnight. Clara frowned. There was no signature. She sat by the window, listening to the wind rattling the old shutters. Somewhere below, the faint hum of machinery echoed through the pipes, rhythmic, steady, like a heartbeat. She opened her laptop and began to type notes. Patients do not speak. Staff too formal. Photographs missing names. The silence feels intentional. She paused, rubbing her temples. Her reflection in the dark glass of the window looked pale, unfamiliar. And then, a movement. In the courtyard below, a light flickered in one of the lower windows. A shadow moved past it, tall, thin, dragging something heavy. Clara leaned closer, but the light vanished. Moments later, someone knocked softly at her door.
Miss Weiss,
Whispered a woman's voice.
it's Nurse Elise.
Clara hesitated before opening it. Elise stood in the hallway, her expression tense. In her hands, a small file folder.
I shouldn't be here.
She murmured. But you need to see this. Inside the folder were patient records, yellowed pages, handwritten notes, medical charts. But the dates didn't make sense. Some files were over 50 years old, others just months apart, and the same names kept reappearing. Reinhard, Friedrich, 1957. Reinhard, Friedrich, 1972. Reinhard, Friedrich, 1998. Clara's eyes widened.
This can't be right. That would make him...
Elise nodded.
I don't think he's who he says he is. None of them are.
Her voice trembled.
Every few years, the roles change. The staff become the patients. And the patients...
A sound cut through the corridor. Metallic, slow, deliberate footsteps. Elise froze.
Hide this.
She hissed, shoving the folder into Clara's hands before slipping back into the dark hallway. Seconds later, Dr. Reinhardt appeared at the end of the corridor, his silhouette framed by the yellow light. He smiled calmly.
You're awake, Miss Weiss. I hope you're finding your stay enlightening.
Clara forced a smile, hiding the folder behind her back.
Just writing notes for my article.
Good.
He said softly.
It's important to record what you see. Sometimes the mind forgets things that shouldn't be remembered.
His eyes lingered on her for a moment too long before he turned and disappeared down the hall. Clara shut the door and locked it. Her hands were shaking. She opened the folder again and turned the last page. Tucked inside was a photograph, a group of doctors standing proudly in front of the clinic's entrance. Dr. Reinhardt stood in the center, but the date on the photo read 1901. Clara didn't sleep that night. every time she closed her eyes, she heard faint whispers behind the walls, like voices speaking just out of reach. Sometimes they were pleading, sometimes laughing. Once, she swore she heard her own name. At 3:17 a.m., the power flickered. The room plunged into darkness, and the sound of the rain was replaced by something else. A low, rhythmic humming, echoing from deep below the building. Clara rose slowly from bed and switched on her phone flashlight. The light cut through the shadows, trembling with her hands. On the inside of her door, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. Faint scratches, long and thin, like fingernail marks. What happened here before me? She took a shaky breath and pressed her ear against the door. Somewhere down the corridor, she heard soft footsteps. Not hurried, but deliberate, careful, almost as if someone was pacing back and forth right outside her room. Then, silence. Clara waited, every muscle in her body tense. When she finally dared to look out the peephole, she saw nothing but the empty hallway, except for one detail. The light above door number 13 was flickering, and though she knew every patient's room was supposed to be locked, the door was slightly open. Clara's curiosity won over fear. She stepped outside, the floor cold under her bare feet, and approached the door. Inside, the room was completely dark except for a dim light from the window. The air was heavy with the smell of disinfectant and something else. Metallic. Old. On the bed lay a pile of photographs. Each one showed a different person. Patients, doctors, nurses. All their faces were scratched out with something sharp. But in the corner of the last photo, Clara froze. She saw her own face, and under it, written in shaky handwriting, were the words, "The observer becomes the observed." Her pulse quickened. She turned toward the door, ready to run, and saw a figure standing in the hallway. Dr. Reinhardt. Only now, under the flickering light, he didn't look the same. His face seemed older, thinner, almost translucent. His eyes glowed faintly, like glass catching the moonlight.
Curiosity
He said quietly.
is the first step to madness, Miss Weiss.
Clara backed away, her phone trembling in her hand.
Who are you?
She whispered. He smiled, that calm, clinical smile.
I've been asking myself the same question
He murmured.
for more than a century.
Then the lights went out. The darkness stretched endlessly. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as her phone flickered weakly, casting trembling shadows on the walls. She realized she wasn't in her room anymore. The corridor had shifted. Doors she had never seen before lined the hallway, each one slightly ajar, spilling pale yellow light into the mist. A whisper came from every direction, a chorus of voices.
Leave. Leave. Stay. Watch.
Her legs moved on their own, stepping toward a door marked only by a faint number, 00. The moment she reached for the handle, A voice whispered clearly in her ear.
Clara.
She froze. Then the door swung open. Inside was a room like no other. Walls lined with mirrors. Her reflection appeared in every surface. Not just one, but dozens, dozens of Claras staring back at her, all with different expressions. Fear, rage, despair, curiosity. In the center of the room stood Dr. Reinhardt. But this time, he was different. He was not a man, not a doctor. He was the sum of every patient who had ever been here, every staff member who had lost themselves, every mind that had wandered too far into the silent ward. And he was smiling.
Do you understand now?
He asked, his voice a chorus of whispers.
The clinic isn't about recovery. It's about observation, control, perspective. Every visitor becomes part of the collection.
Clara's reflection in the nearest mirror moved independently. It stepped closer to her, raising its hand. A chill ran down her spine.
You came here to watch, to write, to understand.
Reinhardt said.
But observation is a trap. And once you see, you cannot unsee.
The mirrors began to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. Clara felt herself pulled into one, her own reflection stretching, twisting, becoming someone she didn't recognize. The whispers rose into a crescendo.
The observer becomes the observed. The observed becomes the observer. You belong here.
And then, silence. Clara opened her eyes. She was back in her room. The sun was rising through the dusty curtains. Her hands trembled as she held her phone. Nothing but the note from the night before. Do not leave your room after midnight. Her heart still raced. She tried to speak, but no words came. Outside the window, the clinic looked the same as it had the day before. But in the courtyard, a shadow moved, tall, thin, dragging something invisible across the wet ground. Clara realized she had a choice. Leave and tell the world what she had seen, or stay and understand. Her fingers hovered over the phone, the words of Dr. Reinhardt echoing in her mind.
Curiosity is the first step to madness.
She looked at the mirrors on the wall, or perhaps they were just reflections of herself. She had no idea anymore. And somewhere, deep within the walls of St. Verena's, a whisper smiled.
Welcome to the silent ward.